thought I heard somebody come in. Say, you're from the Frisco, aren't you? You know, I've just come back from a trip on your railroad. Went over to see how you use radio on your freight trains. It's a very interesting story, and I'm going to do a broadcast about it. Would you like to read what I've been writing? Or better still, suppose I just tell you about it. I've always been interested in radio since I worked for a radio station, so I decided to go over to Springfield, Missouri to see for myself just how your radio operates. Before I knew it, your signal and communications department had me all lined up for a ride. The train I went on was number 131 from Springfield to Memphis. The engineer was Don Black and the fireman was W.D. Zittel. I never realized there was so much to be done before a freight train could roll. And right away I discovered how radio is used from start to finish on any train trip. One of the first things the engineer does when he enters the cab is to turn on the radio and check it to make sure it's working. He knows what he's doing because, like all train and enginemen who handle radio, he's had to pass an FCC operating examination. Identification of both the caller and the station he's calling are important, I found out. I noticed Engineer Black was careful to keep the button down on the receiver while he talked. He explained that if you don't keep the button down while you're talking, you won't get through. At the same time, he's careful to lift his finger when he's listening. One of the first things that's done is a test of the train brakes by the carmen. This is a faster and surer method than the whistle or hand signals formerly used, especially in a large yard where several engines might be giving whistle signals simultaneously, and the carman has to weed out the whistle of the train he's working. I noticed that the carman was careful not to talk while someone else was using the radio. He explained to me later that when two persons talk at the same time, the reception is cut out, and neither can hear the other. The conductor boarded his train with the consist just before we left. Information from this report is given to the engine by radio. It's important that the engineer know how many loads, empties, and tonnage his locomotive is pulling. Radio feeds this information to him. Highball, ready to go. With tonnage and consist recorded and the air and radio checked, the train is ready to go. Underway, the first thing Fireman Zittel did was to go back to check the engines in both units and the radio in the second unit. Say, it's a good thing he checked the radio, because something was wrong with the reception. As soon as he returned to the first unit, Fireman Zittel called the conductor to let him know that the radio on Unit 5036 was out of order. Engineer Black didn't waste any time either. When we reached the next open station, he dropped off a report for the agent to send on to Memphis. Black told me a radio man would get that report and meet us at Memphis to repair the radio. If the radio on the first unit had gone out too, we would have been out of touch with the conductor except for whistle and hand signals. Black told me end-to-end radio really is a big help. It not only keeps the crew in touch with one another, but it also saves time as well as increasing safety. It took only about 4 hours, but it seemed like only minutes until we were pulling into Thayer, Missouri, where we changed crews for the final run into Memphis. The new engineer was B. Lamb, and the fireman was J.W. Baker. I decided to move back to the caboose for the rest of the run to see how radio helps back there. The new conductor was W.H. Jackson. One of the first things he did after getting aboard was to go to the electric power panel and check the switches from right to left. Unless these switches are turned on, the radio won't operate, of course, and each conductor is supposed to check them after he boards the train. When the train reaches the end of its run, the last conductor turns them off. Of course, the air and consist were checked again. Then it was pretty much a matter of just riding for almost an hour. We started to slow down. I asked the conductor what was happening, and he said we apparently were going to meet a train, and that we were heading in to give the other train the main track. He told me the other train was still several miles away, and I asked him why, by using radio, we couldn't meet the other train at a point further along the track. He explained that while we might conceivably do this, we were permitted to because train operating orders always supersede any information obtained by radio. Conductor Jackson replied right away, and the other train gave him its location. Jackson told him we were just going into the siding and that we would look him over as he went past. I didn't know just what he meant until I saw the brakeman go to the radio cabinet and take out a pack set. The conductor explained that by using a pack set, the brakeman could keep in touch with both his own train and the passing train. Brakeman H.C. Sullivan walked forward about 40 car lengths before arrival of the passing train. He crossed the mainline tracks and stooped down to get a better view of the wheels as they passed, and then set up radio contact with his pack set. These pack sets, I learned later, have a range of about 1 or 2 miles and certainly are a lot better than hand signals, which the conductor of the other train might misunderstand or miss completely. The brakeman checked the train for hot boxes, dragging brake beams, and any other difficulties as it rolled by. Fortunately, he didn't spot any, but if he had, he could have notified the passing train immediately. As 1:34 passed, the brakeman told its conductor that everything was okay. With the brakeman aboard, the conductor notified the engineer, and we were underway again. Everything was going along smoothly when suddenly the conductor yelled, "We got a hot one," and grabbed the radio phone. I climbed up in the cupola to see what was going on and saw what he meant. We had a hot box about 20 cars ahead. The engineer stopped the train as soon as Conductor Jackson told him about the hot box, and the conductor got off with some water to extinguish the fire and coolant to lubricate the journal. He took his pack set with him so he could report the condition of the journal to the engineer immediately. Fortunately, Jackson was able to extinguish the flames in time and little damage was done, so the car could go on in the train. Jackson told me later that the use of radio has simplified the handling of hot boxes and that a lot of delay and damage was thus being prevented. I complimented the conductor on the calmness he displayed when his train was delayed by a hot box. He commented that he'd learned to become calm after discovering that he could be imprisoned for violating the FCC rule against using profanity over the radio. With the hot box cooled, we didn't have any more trouble during the rest of the trip into Memphis. As we approached Memphis, we heard the engineer calling the yardmaster there to find out what track we were scheduled in on. He gave the yardmaster our location and was told we would get track 17. Of course, the caboose receives the information simultaneously, as its radio set is on the same wavelength. The conductor told me that radio is a big help in getting this information because it permits deferring assignment of a track until the train is ready to enter the yards. Another advantage of radio is that by constant communication with the conductor, the engineer can be sure the train is stopped in a specific spot. We were told to stop the caboose opposite switch 18, and the engineer brought it in easily. By this time, I was thoroughly interested in train radio, so I decided to see how it was handled in a Frisco yard. Where else would I go but Springfield? So I caught the northbound Kansas City, Florida special out of Memphis that day. The next day in Springfield, I went out to the yards after breakfast. I decided to start in the yardmaster's tower, the hub of all the activity. I learned that the use of radio in Frisco's major terminals has proven to be a big time saver. Although the switch crew has a list of work to be done during the day, frequently plans are changed. The yardmaster told me that in the event of a change now, he can call the closest switch crew by radio and have them perform the job almost immediately, without having to wait for them to telephone in as they used to. Radio is mighty handy when the switch foreman finds his switch list doesn't compare with what he finds on the spot. The foreman can call the yardmaster and get things straightened out immediately. Whenever engine trouble develops or a switcher gets on the ground, radio is on the job again. The trouble is reported to the yardmaster by the switch foreman, and help is sent right away, thus preventing lengthy delays while trying to find a telephone. Yes, train radio really means a lot on the Frisco. It means more rapid handling of the freight that the Frisco's continued existence depends upon. It means clearer communications so that you no longer have to wonder if you've interpreted a signal properly. You know. Last but not least, it means safer operation. Radio has been an important tool to me, and now I can see that it's an important tool to you, too. But just like all tools, it can become rusty with disuse. But used properly, it can make your job easier and safer. Use it often. Use it properly. But use it.